This meeting to order. First on the agenda, where's my agenda? Pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call, all are present except for Brian Ames and Isaiah Larry. All right, accept and move, approve with a waiver of the reading of the minutes. Does anybody want to do that?
So moved. I move to approve the reading, to accept and approve waiving the reading of the minutes for the meeting held on November 18th, 2020.
Second?
Second, good. Any discussions? No? All in favor? Opposed? It's 5-0. Okay, next is review and approval of all warrants. Yes.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the warrants as presented, which includes payroll.
Okay, any second?
Second.
All right, any discussions? No? All in favor? All opposed? 5-0. Okay, reports, MCCCA.
Chair, I don't have anything to report today.
Okay. Central Maine Workforce Board.
I don't have anything either other than new bylaws are going to be approved and signed soon by the workforce board.
Okay. And then the administrators report.
Okay, just very quickly, we are awaiting the final geo audit, preparing for the year end and doing the 2020 county audit. The new server is being uploaded for service downstairs, so that should be online here fairly soon, or at least everybody hopes so. In your packet, I have calculated the proposed tax for communities for 2021 with a proposed overlay. And now that's if the state, that's providing the state doesn't change their valuations. The state valuations are at this point not finalized. They won't be finalized till the end of January. But if all goes according to the way it is now, the tax rate is reduced from 0.00125 to 0.00120, or from $1.25 per thousand to $1.20 per thousand. And because there was some increase in valuation, state valuation.
How much are you including in the overlay here?
Pardon?
How much are you including in the overlay?
About 176,000. Last year was 157. So.
Okay.
The next meeting, you will need to choose the MCCA and Risk Pool Director and alternate for 2021. So I'll have that on the agenda. And finally, I need to report that Joan Bouchard, who was some of you know, was a long-time EMA employee, died a week ago Friday.
Oh.
So, she had retired earlier this year from EMA. So that's all I have.
Okay, can we accept the administrator's report or no? No. Just look at this. Okay. Comments from the public? Any comments? No comments? New business? Anyone wanting any additional new business? No? Okay. Discussion items? Any discussion items? Yes.
I do have one, and it's sort of directed to you. Before you leave, I want to get everything you know, I want you to leave it behind. And during the budget process,
Yeah.
you were pushing us to do it differently, and the more you talked about it, the more it made sense, because department heads have discretionary spending over their budget, and we've always done it line by line. Most of the little towns that I represent do it line by line. I'd like you to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So, because the budget line authority is at the department level, right? Meaning if you're over budget or under budget, it's at the department level, it's not at the payroll level, or it's not at the supplies level, it's at the department level. To me, and generally how I assist my clients, it just makes it a lot easier to think of the budget when they're preparing the budget. I apologize for this mask, it doesn't have a nose thing, so it just keeps falling down. It's easier for when they're preparing the budget to consider the budget like a checklist, right? Meaning the department heads have a checklist of, just to make sure that they're including everything that they need to think about. And then when it goes to the select board or to the commission, they're really just determining whether or not that overall line is appropriate. And then when they make, if they make cuts, they simply say, okay, well, yeah, all right, we see that, for example, it was $100,000 last year for this department, it's $105,000. It's a 5% increase. We're really not comfortable with a 5% increase. We'd rather do it at a 3% increase or 0% increase. And so we're only going to approve this budget. Even though the department had made a request for 105, we're only gonna approve it at 100,000. And however the department head wants to allocate that money, that's perfectly fine. And then, of course, the department heads are usually going to say, yeah, but I went through and I really need all of these things, right? If that were the case, in reality, because most times, by nature, you kind of add in some additional stuff, right? You say, well, supplies last year was like $900, it was $800 the year before, I'll go with $1,000. So there's always like little areas where you can, within the budget say, within the department head budget say, all right, well, we can cut here, we can cut there. But to say, all right, well, we're gonna cut your supplies line by $200, and then your whatever wages line by, or well, not wages, right? Because, but all these other little things by, you know, $100 there, $100 there, just seems to me to just take up a lot of unnecessary time. It's not, you're not really concerned with how they spend their budget outside of, did you stay within this $100,000 that we told you to stay within? That's basically all it comes down to.
And that's how we always have done it, line by line.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not always married to the way we've always done it.
No,
And
right.
you were the first one I heard really more than once, you know, sort of oppose or have us sit back and take a look at what we were doing. So I really wanted to hear you
Yeah.
talk about it a little bit.
And, I mean, this, right, I mean, most places, that's how they think of it. They think of it as, well, we're the select board, and so we're gonna go through every single line. Do you really? No, you don't really have to, and is it useful to do that? Not really, because even if you approve $1,000 for supplies, it's not like they're not gonna go over it if they need more supplies, they're gonna go over it. So who cares whether you approved $1,000 in supplies or not? What matters is the budget line authority, meaning you absolutely cannot go over this amount.
Mhm.
And if you go over this amount, we have to have, in town's cases, we either have to call a special meeting, or we have to use reserves, and that has to be approved by the select board, all of that type of stuff. That's the trigger, because if you're thinking about it, really, all the select board is trying to do, or all the commission is trying to do, is set an overall amount that you want to kind of give a trigger to the people that, hey, we need more money, right? So in towns, when they go, okay, well, we're authorizing you at the town meeting, we're authorizing you to expend X millions of dollars. Well, if you go over that amount, it's really supposed to be a trigger for you as the town manager or you as the select board to say, ugh, we shouldn't have gone over this amount, but if we have to go over this amount, we have to go and tell the people because it's their money, right? And we have to ask them, can we appropriate more of your funds that we already have in our bank, right? Because we have a fund balance. Can we appropriate more than what you told us we could appropriate? I have a lot of clients that deal with that on a regular basis. They're always concerned, well, geez, you know, the roads budget because of the snow is gonna be over by $20,000 and, you know, and I'm like, well, yeah, but what was the article? The article was on the public works. Are you over your public works budget? No? Then what do you care? What do you care if it was over 20,000? Do you have 20,000 somewhere else? It's nice to keep track of it, right? Because if, as you get closer and closer to the end of the year, you can, it's a kind of an alert for you to say, well, maybe we are gonna be over budget, and so we wanna go ahead and ask the townspeople ahead of time whether or not we can go over the budget or not, or whether or not we can appropriate more funds, right, increase the budget. But it doesn't make much sense to me for, at this level, for the select board or the commission to delve into the details. It's not really our role. I don't see it.
Yeah, no, that's, I really wanted to hear you address it, because I knew you felt strongly about it. On any of the counties or towns you worked with, and I guess I would ask Mr. Post this too, you've done a lot of local work, do they ever have, like with the credit union, we actually have in our board, our credit union board has in our bylaws a procedure for budget approval. I was looking through Town Turner to see if I could find a template for one. They don't have any, they don't, of course, they go line by line and fight over lines, so, you know. But have any of the counties you've worked with ever had a procedure for the budget process?
Not to that detail, but only as we have, which, you know, department heads come to me, I go to you.
Right,
goes
and
to-
just
and so
the
on.
one that's laid out
But there's
in
nothing,
the charter.
I haven't seen anything of real specific that, no, you don't do line by line, you do this and so on.
Have you ever seen anything like that?
No, I mean, there's nothing that, there's state statutes for counties on how the budget process has to be.
Right.
But there's not, I've not seen any of the towns have a specific policy that says how the budget has to go. And of course, there's state statutes on what has to be, how the warrants have to be prepared and all that for schools and stuff. But again, schools are another primary example, right? The schools, state statute tells you there's only 11 line items, right? So, however, you know, there's regular instruction, special education instruction. That's all that the committee is approving to go to the budget validation meeting for the townspeople or the district to approve. Do they really care? I mean, yeah, I think most places they actually go in and they go, oh, let's take this out and take that out. To me, that's not my job. What do I know what the district attorney needs for supplies this year? I don't know, whatever. I do know what I don't want him to spend. I don't want him to spend more than 5% of what he spent last year, or what he budgeted last year. So we'll stick with just the overarching percentage increase. That's how I do it. But most people don't. Don't get me wrong, that this county was different. I just didn't see the need for doing it.
Yeah,
It makes
that's
it-
what I wanted to, I just wanted to get out of you, you know, your reasoning and,
Yeah.
okay, thank you,
Yeah,
that's very
I mean,
helpful.
okay.
It actually makes a lot of sense. And it's more in line with the way you do things, you know, outside of
Right.
government, you know.
Well, I mean, even like in budget committees with towns, I mean, that's where you're supposed to be hashing out, okay, how much do we really wanna go to, right? And the budget committee is usually made up of members of the select board anyway. So they're already getting into the details at that committee level. But once it gets to the board level, you know, whatever, what's the top line number, or what's the bottom line number?
Now in Turner, we have our budget committee, and then you have your board of selectmen. They come to the town meeting,
And they're two separate things.
and they sit at separate tables, and one presents their view, and I think Leeds does it the same way, the other presents their view, and then the town votes on it
Yes,
after a lengthy discussion.
yes. And, I mean,
It's
for
an
me,
old lady thing.
to me personally, I think, you know, the way Maine is unique in that it has these town meetings and people are approving these budgets. To me, I'm like, oh, they don't really know. I mean, when you're approving whether or not Public Works should spend, you know, 600,000 or 800,000, do you really know what that's supposed to be made up of? You're not paying attention to the town going normally, right?
Right.
The town operations from day to day. You probably never attend a town meeting, I mean, like a town, the select board meeting, it's very rare, right? So the only thing that towns get, you know, other than the council form is, oh, well, we get this town meeting and I get to say whether or not I want the town to spend more than we budgeted for last year. But if you say no and you really need that road, I mean, it doesn't really make much sense to me. You're not at that level of understanding to approve it, but whatever, that's our law, so it's perfectly fine, and it works.
Thank
It's
you.
just,
Yeah,
it's just
I-
weird, right?
I feel like you're gonna leave us and you got lots of knowledge, and I wanna try to,
Yeah, well,
Get
like
it
I
out
said,
before you
it's
leave.
not, the way the county has been doing it has not been uncommon. It's just when I got into this situation, because when I was working with the town for one of their budgets last year, I essentially said the same thing, I'm like, oh, well, it does kind of make a lot of sense, because the committee has already gone through everything.
Well, and they get the budget. The point you made that I was driving home and really rang true is they have discretionary
Right.
with spending anyways, so going line by line doesn't mean that's where they're going to take it and
No,
use it.
right, that's really just a checklist. The way I view it is, if I'm a department head, did I account for everything that I really need to account for throughout the, for next year? Is there something big that's coming up that I should also have in mind here? Did I account for all the, it's really just a checklist to make sure that you got all the numbers in place so that you can go, yep, 100,000, that's what I need.
Well, after you said what you did, I realized well, I guess I thought of it more as backup. This is backup of,
Yeah.
this is why we need this.
Yeah, right. I
Not
mean,
really, we need to talk about every one of these numbers. This was their backup of why they were asking for this amount. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, that's correct, right. I mean, it makes sense, right? But it's usually, it usually only makes a difference if it's something large, right? Do I really need backup for supplies if it's gonna be the difference between $900 and $1,000? What backup are you gonna give me, right? I mean, it really should be just for those material things, right? Materiality comes into it. When we're talking about audits, we're talking about what's gonna affect the decision makers, and really it's that level at which it makes a difference in whether or not you decide to go with option A or option B. $100, it's not gonna affect my decision. Either I agree with that overall number or I don't. Right?
Yeah, I really wanted to get an understanding of why you were opposing that. Thank you.
I have a question. I apologize for not hearing earlier. What exactly are we discussing, or what are we driving at?
We were just trying to
Just
discussion.
discussion items.
Okay, so are we trying to look at changing the way we do budget next year?
We're just talking
No,
about it.
I wanted to know why, he had brought up some opposition, and I wanted to know, I want his thinking of why he did, because he's gonna be gone before the next budget, and then all that information would be gone.
Because I would just mention that, two things, if the townspeople are the ones footing the bill, so they actually, whether they know all the details or not, they would be the ones closest to, driving on those roads and actually knowing whether those roads need to be replaced or not. I've seen a lot of technocracy where you have all these experts, talk down at town meetings and CDC, et cetera, people talking down to the people who actually, have been able to survive for hundreds of years knowing better without a bunch of, experts telling them what to do. And also just, those people were the ones footing the bill here. There's budget sessions that we have that are presented to us. And then as a board, we then vote, have a public hearing, and then it goes to budget committee, and then it comes back. And really, the town meeting, so to speak, almost doesn't happen. People showed up to the budget committee, the budget hearing this time, but then expenditures were increased, whether that was from savings or not, expenditures were increased. And then you're asking people to come back to vote again. We are the voice of, we're the representatives of our constituents, and they send us here to be able to do what they don't have time to do all the time, which is to be at all our meetings and to also stop spending money. So I just want to mention that because I'm concerned that if we're saying that they don't really know what they're talking about, they're the ones footing the bill, so they know exactly what they're talking about. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just to update Commissioner Larry, most of the discussion was around the way we approach the budget as far as the department heads are concerned, and that allowing them discretion to spend within that budget or not. There just happened to be one line that was mentioned about the town, so it wasn't really.
Understood. But I guess my concern is if we just say, oh, we just want you to cut it to this percent, you can decide whether you spend it on this or that. There's an old saying, but that was in the Army, so to speak, or National Guard. There's an old joke about the Air Force that they would build everything else on their base, and then they didn't have the money for the runways, so then they would go and need more money and they'd get the money. I don't wanna see that happen where people have projects that they really wanna see happen, and we're saying, no, we do have an oversight role of the budget, so we do have the authority to go line by line if necessary, and I think it's our responsibility to make sure we do, so we make sure those funds are spent wisely. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion items? Hearing none, any future agenda items? Hearing none. Okay, we're gonna go into executive sessions. Does anybody have a motion to do so? Commissioner McGowan?
Chair, I got a motion to go into executive session pursuant to Title I, MSRA, Section 4056, subsection A, personnel issues.
Second.
Okay, first and second. Any discussion? All right, all in favor? Opposed? None? 6-0. We are in executive session.
I do believe we will be coming back at our meeting, but we won't be making any decisions after. And I do expect it to be a short executive session.
So in essence, you can pack up and
Right,
go in.
Much.
alright. I'm in.
Thanks, Ron.
Is that off?
Yeah, is that,
Oh, no, it's not, you don't, you're gonna have that up?
no, yeah, it has to be off.
Oh, okay.